Have you ever felt that within you there are forces you don't fully understand? Parts of your personality you'd rather hide, which manifest in the most unexpected moments? Carl Gustav Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist, dedicated much of his work to exploring that depth we all carry inside. According to his theory, the human psyche isn't just made up of the conscious part we show the world. It's composed of unconscious dimensions that exert a powerful influence on our daily lives. For Jung, one of the most significant forces in the unconscious is what he called the shadow. The shadow contains everything we don't want to recognize as part of us. Fears, repressed impulses, desires, and personality traits that don't fit the image we seek to project. Often, society, our upbringing, or our own expectations lead us to deny these facets, convincing us they don't align with the idea of the correct or acceptable person we should be. But as we repress more and more aspects of our true self, that hidden part doesn't disappear. On the contrary, it grows stronger, exerting its influence from the shadows. What's the problem with ignoring the shadow? Many times, that repressed part surfaces uncontrollably. We find ourselves repeating toxic patterns in our relationships, reacting disproportionately to seemingly small situations, or feeling deep anxiety without knowing why. Jung discovered that this resistance to acknowledging our darkness not only blocks our personal growth, but can become an obstacle to experiencing life authentically and fully. The journey toward integrating the shadow is a process that requires courage. It means opening your eyes and seeing yourself as you are, with your light and your shadows, without judging or condemning yourself. Contrary to what people think, loving your shadow doesn't mean reveling in the dark or justifying negative attitudes. It's an act of deep self-love that allows you to embrace your full humanity. And this is where Jung gives us a liberating guideline. By accepting these hidden parts, we stop fighting against ourselves. This internal reconciliation not only brings us peace, but lets us channel the energy we spend on repression toward goals and relationships that nurture our growth. Has it ever happened to you that someone suddenly crosses your path and seems to throw you off balance for no apparent reason? According to Jung, the people who bother us most act as mirrors reflecting something we deny in ourselves. Maybe we project onto them our own arrogance, envy, fear of rejection, or need for approval that we don't admit to having. This phenomenon, called projection, is one of the ways the shadow manifests in everyday life. Instead of recognizing the root within us, we attribute those unwanted qualities to others. The problem with projection is that it traps us in a vicious cycle. By constantly blaming the other, we stop taking responsibility for our own growth. We might believe our partner, friends, or the whole world is to blame for our discomfort, when in reality, it's about unreconciled parts within us. Before moving on, I want to tell you that my book is now available. It's full of advice and techniques to help you overcome emotional blocks and love yourself more. Find the link in the description and the pinned comment. Let's continue. Becoming aware of this can be tough because it means revisiting deep-seated beliefs and admitting that maybe we've been sabotaging ourselves without realizing it. However, the benefit of this awareness is immense. We start freeing ourselves from the automatic reactions that harm us and begin building more genuine relationships. Imagine for a moment that every unpleasant emotion you feel when interacting with someone is actually a message from your unconscious saying, "Look at this. You're denying it, but it's part of you too." How different would life be if instead of blaming others, we use that impulse to dig within and find the root of that discomfort? It's a challenging process, of course, because it forces us to confront the truth of who we are, and sometimes we'd rather maintain the facade of perfection. But the reward is immense, the freedom to be and the chance to connect with others from a place of authenticity. Letting go of relationships that don't nourish us, that drain our energy, or that chain us to toxic patterns is another essential step on this path. Jung pointed out that human connections play a crucial role in shaping our psyche. The people around us influence how we feel, think, and act. If we spend too much time with those who don't respect our essence, criticize us destructively, or manipulate us to fit their mold, we end up disconnected from our truth and feeding our shadow with even more resentment and frustration. Sometimes conflicted relationships serve as catalysts. They show us rawly the wounds we carry inside and invite us to look at what we've repressed for so long. However, when the dynamic stalls and communication becomes a constant battlefield, it's a sign that maybe we need to step back. It's not about running away at the first difficulty, but recognizing when something or someone no longer contributes to our growth and instead reinforces the darkest parts of our shadow. The courage to let go isn't cowardice. On the contrary, it implies responsibility and a great dose of self-awareness. It means realizing you deserve relationships where you can express yourself fully, where your shadow isn't seen as a monster to eliminate, but as part of your human experience that can be integrated and even enrich your connections. When you let go of what hurts you, you create space for what truly makes you flourish. The unconscious is like a vast, deep ocean. It speaks to you through dreams, intuitions, and those gut feelings that, though sometimes irrational, often point to truly meaningful paths. Jung discovered that paying attention to this symbolic language is vital to understanding ourselves holistically. In dreams, for example, the shadow often appears as figures or situations that provoke rejection or fear. Far from being meaningless nightmares, those dream episodes can reveal what parts of ourselves we're avoiding. By reconciling with your shadow, you also start redefining your boundaries. When you don't know or acknowledge your inner depths, it's much easier to let others cross your lines without consideration. The result is constant emotional exhaustion that keeps you in a state of stress and discomfort. The act of loving your shadow is also an act of humility, recognizing that we're not just light, that we also have impulses and traits we dislike, deflates the ego and places us in a more human, realistic perspective. Perfectionism and the obsessive pursuit of an impeccable image in others' eyes can lead to anxiety and disappointment. In contrast, allowing yourself to be genuine, with all that entails, opens the door to an authenticity that pulses with its own strength. When you integrate your shadow, you start seeing opportunities and obstacles. The chaos that once overwhelmed you becomes the prelude to transformation. Carl Jung emphasized that there's no growth without conflict, without an initial clash of forces that breaks the rigidity of our current worldview. That chaos is a call to a new internal organization. It's the breaking of old patterns so something broader and more generous can emerge. Have you noticed that sometimes it feels like life repeats the same lessons until you learn them? Jung attributed these repetitive cycles to the lack of integration of unconscious content. As long as you keep ignoring what your shadow is trying to communicate, situations will keep repeating, maybe with different settings and people, but with the same essence. It could be the same type of conflict in your relationships, the same feeling of emptiness when facing certain projects, or the same fear of rejection that paralyzes you. The pattern at its core is the same. Becoming aware of these cycles is the first step to breaking them. But true liberation happens when, beyond recognizing them, you understand the roots sustaining them within you. For example, if you always end up in relationships where you feel undervalued, there might be hidden beliefs about your own worth or a deep fear of being alone that pushes you to accept less than you deserve. Working with the shadow means facing those beliefs head on and transforming them. This process isn't always comfortable. In fact, it can be deeply challenging. But on the other side of that discomfort, you'll find the freedom to create relationships that reflect your true value. Jung also spoke of individuation, a process of self-realization where we unite consciousness and unconscious to become the most whole version of ourselves. Imagine it as the fusion of all your facets, including those you thought least acceptable, into a single coherent being. As you progress along this path, you experience a sense of wholeness, of being at home within yourself. You no longer need to pretend, hide, or please others at the cost of your own essence. You're free to express yourself with authenticity. The key to loving your shadow is practicing constant self-observation. In the daily hustle, we get caught up in routine and barely give ourselves time to reflect on our emotions and reactions. However, only by looking closely at your inner self can you discover the threads connecting your conscious actions to unconscious impulses. Maybe you notice you react with excessive anger to subtle criticism, and upon digging deeper, you discover a deep fear of not being enough. Or you realize a rooted feeling of jealousy stems from an insecurity you never faced. Each of these revelations is a step toward integrating the shadow. You stop seeing your reactions as unacceptable mistakes and start interpreting them as valuable information about yourself. This doesn't mean you excuse acting irresponsibly or harmfully. It means you give yourself the chance to learn from each experience and transform it. Instead of repressing or justifying your behaviors, you examine them and ask, why did I react this way? What is this intense emotion trying to show me? Compassion toward yourself is essential on this path because sometimes you'll discover things you don't like. However, that's the beauty of the process. Only by facing that discomfort can you turn it into wisdom. If, for example, you uncover resentment towards someone close, it's not about condemning yourself for feeling bitterness, but asking what's behind it. Maybe it's fear of losing closeness with that person or an unresolved sense of injustice. Identifying the origin lets you heal and resolve internal conflicts. As you cultivate this conscious relationship with your shadow, something wonderful happens. You start recognizing it in others too. This isn't about judging, but understanding that we all carry a similar load of light and darkness. When people around you act driven by their own shadow, you react with more empathy, or at least more clarity. You become more aware that their behavior, though it may hurt you, also stems from repressed parts they haven't known how to integrate. This understanding doesn't justify mistreatment or toxicity, but it gives you a clearer map to navigate relationships and decide whether to stay in them or set boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the skills that strengthens most when you've worked with your shadow. You no longer give in to manipulation because you know who you are and recognize your worth. Nor do you let others' insecurities define you because you're learning to see your own without judgment, and that gives you a firmer sense of identity. Plus, you understand your energy is a precious resource worth protecting, so selecting relationships that nourish your growth becomes a priority. Jung often spoke of synchronicity, that seemingly meaningful coincidence that happens when our inner and outer parts align in surprising ways. Often, when we start loving and accepting ourselves fully, we notice life itself begins offering experiences that reinforce that self-love. New projects, contacts, or friendships that resonate with who we are at that moment appear, as if the universe were responding to our shift in internal energy. This synchronicity shouldn't be seen as a mere magical phenomenon, but as the natural result of living with integrity. When our actions and thoughts align with our deepest truths, coincidences tend to multiply. On a collective level, learning to love our shadow has significant repercussions. Imagine a world where people recognize their fears and shortcomings before projecting them onto others, where honest dialogue is encouraged instead of accusation or avoidance. Instead of polarizing, we could build a more understanding and cooperative society. This vision of humanity, though it may sound idealistic, finds its basis in Jung's work, who considered individual and collective health intrinsically linked. In everyday life, loving your shadow frees you from the need for constant approval. You no longer seek to please everyone or fit into molds that don't represent you. Your identity stops being a reflection of what others expect and becomes a genuine expression of your essence. This is the point where many experience a kind of rebirth. They discover talents, passions, and vocations that had remained hidden under the weight of self-denial. Creativity flourishes, the sense of purpose becomes clear, and life takes on a renewed hue. Of course, this path isn't without challenges. Integrating the shadow isn't a final destination, but a lifelong process. There will be seasons when you feel deeply connected to yourself and others when you feel lost or in conflict. It's part of the human condition to experience ups and downs. However, every crisis can be seen as an opportunity to delve even deeper within, to uncover nuances of your personality you hadn't seen before, and to emerge with greater maturity and understanding. The solitude we sometimes fear feeling when embarking on this journey can be a refuge where our inner voice becomes clearer. While we chase external approval, life passes by full of noise and distractions. But in the stillness of introspection, truths emerge that can shake us and, at the same time, set us free. It's in those moments when we realize we're not as alone as we thought, because genuine connection with oneself opens the door to deeper connections with others. Loving your shadow also means reconciling with the past. We all carry stories that have shaped who we are. Often we think the wounds or traumas we've lived through fade with time, but the shadow feeds precisely on what isn't expressed or processed. Maybe in childhood, we learn to stay silent or please others to earn the affection of those around us. In adolescence, perhaps we refuse to show our true personality out of fear of rejection, and in adulthood, without realizing it, we keep repeating patterns of self-censorship that hinder our development. That's why healing means looking back with compassion and, above all, with responsibility. It's not about endlessly blaming those who hurt us, but understanding how those experiences shaped our shadow. Becoming aware of this lets you stop repeating the cycle. It helps you consciously choose how you want to live from now on. In that sense, Jung insisted that true transformation begins when you stop seeking answers to your inner voids in the outside world. The essential work is internal. It's your relationship with yourself. As you develop this inner relationship, your outer life transforms. People who no longer align with your new level of consciousness drift away, sometimes naturally and almost imperceptibly. It might hurt at first because of attachment or habit, but the liberation you experience by letting go opens space for new interactions that vibrate with your current frequency. You're surprised to find people who inspire you, who respect your authenticity, and who in turn share their own process of shadow integration. This way, you weave a network of mutual support where growth is shared. Dreams and goals that once seemed like mere fantasies can come to life. Integrating the shadow is like untying energetic knots that blocked your creative power. By working with your unconscious and aligning your actions with your deepest desires, your whole being moves toward its fulfillment. You might feel a renewed inner strength, a drive that motivates you to pursue those projects fear of failure or judgment once paralyzed. It's common at this point to feel a childlike awe. Why didn't I do this sooner? The answer is you weren't ready. You hadn't gained the necessary perspective. Remember that every phase of life serves its purpose, and every obstacle or toxic relationship was also a teacher that, though painfully, pointed you toward the path you needed to take to get here. Without those challenges, you might never have discovered the strength within you. Once you start living from this place of authenticity, the word freedom takes on a deeper meaning. It's no longer just the ability to move without external restrictions. It's the experience of being who you are in every moment, without masks. You stop living with the constant fear of being found out or of others seeing your flaws. There's an internal integrity that gives you the peace of knowing you have nothing to hide. And this sensation is priceless because every day becomes an opportunity to expand and share your light with the world. At this point, you also accept that not everyone will be ready to receive your authenticity. Some people might feel threatened when someone decides to drop appearances and live transparently. They might criticize you, mock you, or try to make you doubt your path. But having already walked the process of integrating your shadow, you understand that rejection or judgment comes from their own shadow, from aspects they haven't recognized within themselves. With maturity, you choose not to take it personally and focus on your journey. The act of sharing your experience can inspire others who, like you, are seeking to break free from their inner chains. By speaking openly about your shadow, your fears, and the lessons learned, you break the taboo surrounding imperfection. You let them see they're not alone, that we all face internal struggles, and that true strength lies in daring to look them in the face. This openness creates a space for genuine connection where relationships stop being a superficial exchange and become bridges of mutual evolution. In Jung's analytical psychology, the concept of the self represents the totality of the psyche, a higher instance that encompasses both consciousness and the unconscious. According to Jung, the journey of individuation is ultimately a journey toward the self, toward that center that unifies all our facets and gives us a deep sense of belonging to ourselves and the universe. Loving your shadow brings you closer to that center, allowing the duality of light and darkness to integrate into a harmonious whole. This vision is profoundly spiritual. It doesn't require adopting a particular religion, but invites you to recognize the transcendent dimension of life. When you integrate your shadow, you understand that the separation you felt between yourself and the world, between what you like and what you reject, begins to dissolve. By accepting your own darkness, you also become more compassionate with the darkness you see in others. Instead of judging, you wonder what wounds might lie behind their behavior. It's a shift in perspective that promotes empathy and understanding instead of confrontation. Practically, you'll find it easier to stay calm in situations that once threw you off balance. You no longer feel the need to respond with aggression or defensiveness because you've stopped seeing the other as an enemy attacking your personal worth. That worth is now firmly rooted within you. It doesn't depend on external approval or judgment. And by not needing constant validation, you discover you're freer to express your ideas and emotions sincerely. On the other hand, you reclaim control of your own life's script. You stop being a supporting actor in the story others write for you and become the main author of each chapter. Your decisions no longer stem from inertia or the obligation to fit in, but from a genuine desire to expand your being and serve the world from your authenticity. This paradigm shift might lead you to reassess your work plans, personal projects, and how you spend your time. Maybe you'll dare to leave a job that doesn't fulfill you or explore artistic paths that once seemed unfeasible. In this process, you might encounter external resistance. Some people won't understand your transformation and prefer to remember you as you were before, more predictable or accommodating. But when you've experienced the freedom of loving your shadow, it becomes harder and harder to pretend. While it's true that adapting to this new state requires adjustments, it's also true that the rewards far outweigh the costs. Feeling whole, at peace with yourself, and open to life is a source of satisfaction that's hard to match. Ultimately, Jung reminds us that the outer world is a mirror of our inner world. Loving your shadow frees you because, by reconciling with the deepest parts of your being, you transform how you experience reality. This doesn't mean life becomes a path free of obstacles. There will always be challenges and moments of confusion, but your willingness to face those challenges with an open, conscious, and brave heart is what makes the difference. Instead of fearing the darkness, you understand it as part of the cosmic dance of existence, where light and shadow intertwine to give rise to the fullness of the human being. If right now you feel an inner call to dive deeper into this topic, it's a sign your unconscious is ready for you to take another step in integrating your shadow. Accept that invitation. Dedicate time to introspection. Observe your reactions. Write about your dreams and emotions. Seek readings and resources to help you understand yourself better. And above all, be patient and compassionate with yourself. The path may have ups and downs, but each step brings you closer to a more genuine and expansive version of yourself. To close this journey, I want to invite you to share your experience and reflections. Share this message with someone it might help. With that person you know is seeking to break free from emotional ties or feels trapped in repetitive patterns. Leave your comment below. Tell us what part of this message resonated with you or what action you plan to take to love your shadow. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell to stay connected with this kind of content that seeks to help you grow and discover your true potential. Every step you take toward your authenticity not only transforms you, but leaves a mark on those around you. The more people decide to look within honestly, the greater the collective awakening will be. Imagine what a world would look like where everyone is at peace with themselves and, therefore, able to offer their best to others. That world begins with you, with me, with each of us who chooses this path of integration and love. Thanks for being part of this community that dares to live with open eyes, mind, and heart. See you in the next video. Remember, loving your shadow isn't just an individual act of self-knowledge. It's a gift you give the world. Because a person who fully accepts themselves radiates understanding, empathy, and freedom. Until soon, and may your journey of transformation keep illuminating your life and those around you.